Congressman Khanna, thanks so much for being here. It's a huge day. We'll get into that in a second, but this week has certainly been historic. Congress finally passed a bill to force the release of the Epstein files after years of secrecy, years of resistance. You, along with Marjorie Taylor Greene, along with Congressman Massey, were architects of this bill, and Donald Trump, moments ago, just signed it into law. So let's get started. I guess my first question is, what changed, right? Only 4 Republicans signed the discharge petition, but on the House floor, when it came to a vote, only 1 voted against it. So what changed in that matter of days?
We won the narrative. We framed this issue as standing up for survivors, standing up for forgotten Americans versus the Epstein class. And we invited the survivors to come to the Capitol. And they told their harrowing stories of how they were raped and abused, how Jeffrey Epstein set up a rape island where rich and powerful men abused underage girls, engaged in sex trafficking, covered up abuse. And Thomas Massey and I flooded the television and podcasts, and we said, look, Trump is betraying his central promise. He said he was going to get the rot out of the system. But here he's standing with an Epstein class that is corrupt over forgotten Americans. And ultimately, we were able to persuade more of the MAGA influencers, more of the MAGA base, and 60, 70 Republicans to vote with us, to vote for ultimately for a Bay Area congressman's bill. Thomas Massey had the discharge petition, but today Donald Trump signed Ro Khanna's bill. John Thune let Ro Khanna's bill go through. We were able to convince 70 Republicans to vote for my bill in defiance of the President of the United States, in defiance of the Speaker, in defiance of all the pressure campaigns.
So I know a lot of Democrats have been worrying about this today. I'm sure you've seen it. Attorney General Pam Bondi was asked today if the new investigation in the Southern District of New York that Trump basically had her open, a week and a half ago, could prevent some of these files from being released. And her answer was, we're going to follow the law. And you know, because you wrote that law, that it says that they can withhold materials that would jeopardize an ongoing federal investigation, but it has to be narrowly tailored and temporary. Do you suspect that they're going to attempt this and try and at least delay it and, try and go through the courts to delay it?
Well, those investigations impact maybe a few percent of the actual Epstein files. What is it that people want to know? They want to know, who were these other rich and powerful men who went to Epstein's island? Who were these people who raped underage girls? Who were these people who engaged in sex trafficking? A lot of that can come out, even if they try to withhold the documents. Second, as you pointed out, those few investigations, the documents have to be narrowly tailored, and they have to have a temporary basis, and they'd have to go to a court to show that. And now people who are abusing that could go to jail, because it's no longer just, okay, Donald Trump promised to release his files, let me not fulfill his campaign promise. Now they're breaking federal law. So the stakes are much higher. So I anticipate we are going to actually now see a lot of the files released, but it's going to be an ongoing fight.
So like, what about the other carve-outs, the other exemptions, whether it's for classified material? Couldn't Trump just use his executive power to classify documents that he doesn't like, and then Pam Bondi can simply say something like, hey, this is classified, I don't have to release it?
Well, the president can do that anyway. I mean, he has the power to classify things. Of course, he could broadly classify. If you had a law that said that you would take away the president's power to classify documents, it'd be unconstitutional, and you would never get members of Congress to pass it. So the question is he going to abuse that power? And if he abuses that power and starts classifying things that aren't classified, he's going to prolong the scandal, because we're going to get documents as well from the Epstein estate. There's survivors, lawyers who've seen these documents. They would say this is not classified information. And I think Trump, look, there are a lot of things. Trump is a terrible leader, but he's more politically savvy than Johnson. I mean, basically, he hung Johnson out to dry. And I think he realizes this is a losing issue. He realizes that he's losing his base, and he'd be foolish to drag this on. If I were telling him what to do just from a political perspective. I'd say get it all out there before Christmas and hope that you can start talking about something else. The longer that's why they ripped the Band-Aid off and passed it through the Senate. They didn't want this to be the story through the end of the year.
Yeah, that makes sense. So a couple of nights ago, Jeffrey Epstein's brother, Mark Epstein, went on Chris Cuomo's show on News Nation and said that the administration is scrubbing Republican names from the files in a facility in Winchester, Virginia. Have you heard anything about that? Uh, is that something they could actually get away with doing?
Just rumors, but look, there's a very big risk. Anyone who does that could be hauled in front of Congress for contempt when we would take the Congress back and Robert Garcia is the chair. Anyone who does that could be prosecuted when we have a Democratic president in 2029. Even if you believe that Pam Bondi or Donald Trump could politically be immune, the career folks who are doing this scrubbing aren't immune, and they're the ones who often end up in jail. So if I were someone directed to do something illegal, I would either resign or not do it. And the second thing is we would know if they're doing it because our I've talked to the lawyers of the survivors who've seen the files. I've talked to people. There are people in the Justice Department, career folks, who've seen the files. So that would leak that they are providing contaminated evidence, and it would be foolish because I actually think that if they just release the files, that there's a chance that it's not going to be the end of the Trump presidency. But if they start tampering with these files, that very well may. That it's often the cover up is worse.
So, what if there's a lot of files redacted, and Pam Bondi comes out and there's so many redactions that it's unbelievable. Would then the oversight committees of either the House or the Senate be able to view what the redactions were? Is that how it would work? Would there be other people in Congress able to see what was redacted?
Yes, I do think that there would be people who'd be able to see what was redacted. And the other thing is that there are lawyers for the survivors who've seen the files and would be able to say, well, they're redacting things that aren't really classified or sensitive. And the challenge they have is the people who were the most upset with the release that Van Bondi did was the MAGA base. They're the ones who are following this the closest. So if they release things that have too many redactions or that are not answering the central question, then they're going to have a further rebellion on their hands and politically possibly be violating the law. And what is the central question that people want? They want to know who else was on the island. They want to know who else raped or abused young girls. That's it. That's what they want to know. All these files, all that's jargon. They want to know who were these powerful men? Are they still on corporate boards? Do they still have uh, prestigious positions? Why aren't they held accountable? That's what people want to know. And that's why when you have all this release of the Epstein files, people don't buy it because the names aren't there and people want the names.
So you mentioned there's people who would come forward if they did try and cover stuff up, whether it be victims, lawyers, other lawyers. Do you know if there's anybody in the FBI or DOJ who might be willing to blow the whistle if Pam Bondi, Donald Trump tries to cover up certain information or certain files?
I think so now that we have a law, because now they know that they could be held liable for watching a crime. And that increases the chances of whistleblowers because there are a lot of people at the Justice Department, both currently who are career folks or former Biden administration officials who have seen the files. And some of them could easily come forward.
Do you personally expect the files to implicate any elected officials, including Trump? What are your personal thoughts on that?
Well, I refuse to speculate because I don't think there's any help in that, and I've it's one of the reasons I've succeeded in building this coalition. We didn't make it about Donald Trump. We made it about getting the facts out and survivors having justice and let the facts go wherever they are. And we've been very disciplined about that, and we'll continue to be very disciplined because I don't want the American people thinking that Thomas Massey or I have any political agenda in this. We've earned the trust of a lot of people. And this way, if we speak out and say that the release is not full or there's some problem with it, people will believe it. If I start to speculate about information and imply that this is going to hurt a particular party or person, then Massey and I would lose credibility in doing that.
I do recall that Massey, I guess it was a couple months ago now, said that he has seen a list of, I think it was like 25 names or something, and it included a high-ranking government official. He gave like specifics of, not specifics, but he gave a broad overview of who some of these people were. I think one was a rock star. Have you seen that list?
I have not, but I've talked to Thomas Massey about it. There was one of the survivors who passed that information to him, and he believes that it should come out from the Epstein files. I mean, there's some talk about could he or others say the names, but that's putting a huge burden on the survivors, and that shouldn't be the case. We should have the list come out, and also if we're saying the names, it's going to make that suspect. People will suspect a political motive. We need to just get the facts out and the release out.
Why do you think you guys have been so successful? Marjorie Taylor Greene, yourself, Thomas Massey, working together across the aisle, not letting political differences and other aspects get in the way, when it seems like all of the rest of Congress is just so dysfunctional.
Because we made it about the cause, not about party. When I did the bill, I made it clear that we would lead with Thomas Massey's name. And to this day, the vast majority of people think it's Massey's bill, which was fine. It was intentional because we wanted to have a Republican on the top, even though it was underlying had to be a Democratic bill. When I had the press conference, I didn't have all these Democrats there. I invited Marjorie Taylor Greene. I gave her the place of honor for what she was doing. That helped her get bought in. We made it about the survivors. We didn't make it just about Donald Trump. We had conversations with Republicans, and I had developed a working relationship with people like Nancy Mace. I got Lauren Boebert to skip the line to sign the discharge petition, telling Democrats, make way. We need her to sign and make way for her. And so we built a unique coalition. And this is the one coalition that has managed to topple Trump. I mean, and have Trump cave. All these people saying fight, 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 fight. I mean, look, I guess you could go on MSNBC and you can do viral TikToks and you can have performative fights, or you can win fights like we did in blue states. But the question is, are you actually going to stand up to Trump and have him lose part of his base? Are you actually going to be able to get Trump to cave to you? And that's what we did. And I would suggest that it shows a different approach than just a frontal attack on Trump and calling him every name in the book. I would suggest that it means going and listening and respecting MAGA voters and understanding what's on their mind. Why is it that they voted for this person twice? What is it that they're upset about? And going there with respect and civility, and then thinking about an agenda that can convince them that we are on their side. I believe that is standing up for forgotten Americans against the Epstein class, just like FDR stood up for forgotten Americans against the economic royalists. And I believe it's a vision of a new economic patriotism that we can offer. So that has been my view of politics. People often said Roe's too civil, he's too nice, he goes on these things. But the nice guy actually is the guy who managed to get Trump to cave.
So before we let you go, you did mention the Epstein estate had more files. When can we expect to see those files?
Well, that's an ongoing process. That was because of Lawrence O'Donnell. I was on his show, and Lawrence O'Donnell said, "Ro, you should talk to this lawyer and write the Epstein estate a letter, and they'll comply." And they did. I mean, it's shocking that no one at Justice or FBI even thought to get those files from the estate. That's an ongoing process that we're undertaking, and Robert Garcia is also doing a great job there. They're releasing files, and we expect to continue to get them through the next few months.
Well, Khanna, Congressman Khanna, thank you so much. I know you're busy. I know you have other interviews to do. I appreciate you joining us. I feel more confident that we are going to get information. I feel more confident that maybe Pam Bondi and Donald Trump won't be able to brush everything under the rug again. Thank you once again. Keep working across the aisle. I think that's great. Work on things that pretty much all Americans agree on.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you,
thank you.
Congressman.
I'm a big fan of both you and Ed, and I appreciate your approach to politics. I think there is a post-partisan progressive coalition that can be built around standing up for Americans who feel shafted by a system that hasn't worked, who feel that the American dream is lost. And the leaders of the future on both sides will be people who aren't in the traditional boxes, who aren't just thinking about things the way they've been the last 30 years, but are looking to form new alliances, new coalitions, because that's what's going to speak to voters cynical about the political process who want independence.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.